Welcome to Uproar in the Studio, your bi-weekly New York-based Chinese blockbuster podcast. I'm Noah.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Reza.
This week we're talking about the Monster Hunt series. This is going to be a little bit of a departure from our normal episode format. Since both of these movies are right next to each other on the list of China's top 10 highest grossing, we're just going to talk about both of them together in one episode.
You don't have to see them. We'll give a synopsis, but if you want to watch them unspoiled, maybe listen to the show after.
Later, we'll be talking with one of the earliest employees at DreamWorks, Guillaume Arretos, who was the production designer of Monster Hunt 2, art director of Shrek and Ants, which I wore out the tape on when I was a kid.
But first, here's our conversation about the movies with Carl Jha. He is the host of the podcast Silk and Steel and one of my favorite tweeters. Follow him at Carl Jha to check out his travels to Rising China. To start, here's the synopsis.
The first Monster Hunt begins with a political uprising in the Monster Kingdom, forcing the pregnant queen to flee. She, followed by her security detail of 2, are chased into a small village of humans under the leadership of Wu Xiaolan, generally considered to be a failure of a mayor. The queen arrives in town at the same time as Song Tianyin, a low-level monster hunter. The 3 are forced together when the town is attacked, and after the queen transfers her pregnancy to Xiaolan, don't ask, and dies, he and Tianyin must decide what to do after becoming the de facto parents of the new baby monster king, Wuba. On the quest to get rid of their new adorable burden, Xiaolan learns that his village was a haven for refugee monsters in disguise and that the Monster Hunters Bureau has been taken over by monster political dissidents in disguise. In the end, Xiaolan and Tianyin come to love their new monster baby and fight the leader of the challenging monsters. When the dust settles, they are left with no choice but to place Wuba in the care of other monsters to protect him from future attacks, and they part ways. In Monster Hunt 2, Wuba's hidden village is found by the challenging monsters, forcing him to go into hiding with a crew of gamblers. Xiaolan and Tianyin search for him after learning what happened. When the family reunited, all is well, and we learn that yet another monster-hunting bureaucratic organization has been taken over by evil monsters. Grape machine guns, strange buffets, and early child development galore. This is Monster Hunt.
So, I guess to start off, we want to really just thank you for bearing with us with these movies. I think we all felt a bit of a slog going through them, but I think there are some interesting themes that we could touch on.
We're a little older than the intended audience, I think.
Yeah, I thought about that because I'm thinking, what is the intended audience here? Because, like, they made the monsters super cute, but there are moments when I'm like, I'm not sure if this is for children, because, yeah, but, I think you guys will know what scene I'm talking about. There was a scene where first a female monster hunter was agreeing to stay the night, and the protagonist, he thought he was going to get lucky. Right? Yeah, and the scene that he was getting tied up in bed, so he thought it was really kinky foreplay. It was comically funny, but I'm like, for a young audience, do they really get it?
Well, I mean, it was amazing, right? In that, like, he did get lucky. He ended up pregnant at the end of the night.
Right. But I was just really confused, like, who is the intended audience of this film? Because I was expecting it to be a lot younger based on the way they made the monsters super cute. And toward the end of the movie, where they get into this like guild that capture all the monsters, and it turns out they're like just chopping them up and serving them as dishes. And I thought, wow, that could be kind of traumatizing for a little child. See all these like cute monsters getting hanging up on like meat hooks, and like getting sliced into sashimi. I mean, like I don't know how I feel if I'm like a 6-year-old watching this.
I mean, even the first scene where it's like them running away from the monsters that are like tracking down the queen, you have that like one that he like grabs him and you hear his neck snap in his hand.
Yeah. And even the part that the queen, when she gave up her baby, she just cut open her belly. I was like, whoa, that's kind of graphic for like little children's movie.
It's like
But
Temple of Doom.
yeah, actually, that did remind me of that.
The thing with like when Wooba gets locked up later on, there's like a minute-long, basically child screaming for a little while.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, I guess are kids reacting to that, or is it adults being told not to eat monster meat?
Yeah, I just thought that would be so traumatizing for like these little children to watch all these cute monsters being eaten. I mean, like especially Uba was supposed to be served with like a like that like that scene from Indiana Jones Temple of Doom where they serve the monkey brain.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yep.
like they had the Wooba just clamped down with his head exposed, and they were supposed to like cut his head open and eat his brain. I was like, oh my god, like.
At that point, I was disappointed though. I wanted to see them try it because everything he was resisting everything. He was invincible. I wanted to see that beetle like just
how far
kill
can he
itself
go?
trying to get inside of Seth.
Okay, so before we go ahead here, I have a question for you guys. So why did you guys choose to watch these two films?
So let me just preface, I guess, what we're doing on the show. So our show's called Uproar in the Studio, and what we decided to do basically is review the top 10 grossing films in China, which is actually really fun because when we got this project together about 5-6 weeks ago, the list was very different to what it is today. So our conception of this is just a list that constantly is changing because every new big movie seems to upend the old movie. So we're down to review monster hunts. We're down to review, military parade films. We're down to review urban love. I mean, this is everything, whatever's happening in China today, I guess.
Oh, you're gonna have to watch some real duds though. Like,
yeah.
Have you guys seen The Mermaid?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I haven't actually
I mean, like, basically, I actually haven't watched the movie, but from what I've heard, the reason Mermaid, scores so high in the box office is because everybody felt sorry for Steve Chow, the producer.
Yeah.
And because the thing about Steve Chow is he was a Hong Kong actor and appeared in many Hong Kong comedies, right? But at that time, all these movies were not legally available in mainland. So everybody on the mainland market, they would watch basically pirated copies or they watch it online. And Steve Chow hit like big time, at least to the Chinese mainland audience, when he made a movie, I think in the late 1990s, he made a remake of Journey to the West. It's like a very wacky reinterpretation. And those movies somehow just coincided with when the internet finally got popularized in China. And the copies of that movie was floating around on the internet. So all the college students saw it. And they found it hilarious, and it became like a meme. There were so many memes coming out of that movie. Like everybody would keep on referencing it, but everybody knew that all they watched was a pirated copy. So because there was a saying that we all owe Steve Chow a ticket. We all. So when Steve Chow finally came out with a big production like The Mermaid, and that's like legally showing in mainland, so everybody say, okay, finally we're gonna pay our respect, owe Steve Chow a ticket, so they all went to see it, and to everybody's surprise, it was not that great.
But it is on the list, and we've seen it, right?
Yeah, but it gives us access to stories like these, basically.
Especially this context, which I was not aware of, at least.
Yeah, but I mean, Steve Chow has some great movies. He's made some great movies, don't get me wrong. So he made another remake of Journey to the West, like a couple years ago. Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen it, but I know it was doing pretty well over here, all things considered, because I think it was one of the top movies for rentals on iTunes for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's making banks right now. But like I mean, he was famous here for shoveling soccer, and then what's that? The Shanghai Hustle.
Is it not Kung Fu Hustle?
Kung Fu Hustle. Yeah, yeah. Those are the classic. You know, everybody knows Shaolin Soccer and Kung Fu Hustle. I mean, you know, to the point that you made into the pop culture reference over here. So he's pretty big. But what he really became making banks is when he's start producing those movies himself, and because for a long time he was an actor, he was just basically making money for other people. And there was actually a rumor that because the Hong Kong movie industry for a long time were controlled by mafia, and there was a rumor that Steve Chow owed the mafia a lot of money. So he was kind of forced to make all these like low budget comedy movie like
Michael Jordan forced out of retirement or something by the mafia.
Yeah, he was forced to crank out all these low budget comedy movies year after year. I mean, like they were really super popular, but he wasn't making money for himself. But now he's in the game for himself. He's producing and redirecting. And I'm just looking up the Journey to the West movie that was super successful, like just recently. This was was it Conquering the Demons? Yeah. It's 2013 movie, Conquering the Demons, Journey to the West. Have you guys seen that one?
No.
I don't think we've seen it. Yeah,
we'll have to add that to the list, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the earlier blockbuster, like back when finally the Chinese box office was getting big. That was one of the early Of course, now, like you say, like the record gets
changing all the time.
Year. Yeah, now it's gonna be Wandering Earth.
Yeah, that's like competing with Wolf Warrior 2 right now.
Yeah, it's actually playing in a bunch of movie theaters around here right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited because that means they get like all these big Chinese blockbuster are getting simultaneous release in US almost like at the same time as China, with exceptions because AMC is owned by Wanda, so Wanda would show most of the movies except movies made by its competitor, the Huayi brothers. So, like that's a reason why Chen Kaige made a movie, I think last year, called The Demon Cat that I kind of wanted to see. And when it came out in China, I was like, what? It's not releasing US? It was releasing Australia. What the heck? Why is it not releasing US? So I was so baffled, and I actually, my sister told me this because my sister keep up with all this entertainment gossip in China. He said, "Oh yeah, because Chen Kaige made that movie with the Huayi brothers, and Huayi brother is in a feud with Wanda right now because apparently Huayi brother they poached one of their top guys from Wanda, and Wanda was carrying a grudge. Wanda control a lot of the movie theater in China and now US AMC, so they would not, all the Wanda theaters would not show Huayi movies. That's why I can't see Demon Cat here. Like, I think it's totally ridiculous. I mean, what's expected from Chinese entertainment industry?
Yeah. It's like old school studio politics.
Yeah. I'm sorry for hijacking your thread.
This is all really, really interesting, honestly.
to sort of bring us back to Monster Hunt, though.
Back to Monster Hunt, yeah.
It seems like a super pro-vegan movie, but is that out of place in Chinese politics?
Oh, dude, yeah, you got that too? Because I was watching this, I was like, dude, are they trying to like tell us we should be all vegetarians? I mean, it's pretty strong. I mean, it's almost like vegetarian propaganda. I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea. I'll probably have to look into it. There might be a background story to it. I don't know. I just don't know.
He was a radish. He was a white radish, so I don't know if it's even telling us that we should eat vegetables.
You should just not eat.
Oh, dude, you're right. You're right. He is literally a radish, or look like one. But I guess fruits are okay because they have all this scene where he was being used like a machine gun after he digested some fruits, right? Like I actually didn't get that. I was like, what was he spitting, like seeds or something?
Yeah, I
Seeds.
think he just couldn't digest the stuff.
So I think, as we understand it, this movie comes at the end of this genre in Chinese film where it's got this nostalgia factors for old Chinese society, you know, something probably before the Cultural Revolution, before the fall of the Qing Dynasty, maybe.
Like I know
So-
Journey to the West is that kind of aesthetic too.
Crouching Tiger.
Yeah, Crouching Tiger.
Yep.
Red Sorghum.
So, Carl, do you think there's a nostalgia for a time before maybe the West made its way into Chinese society as a theme?
I don't know if it's nostalgia, but the period piece definitely has been like mainstay of the Chinese cinema and also TV. Hong Kong cinema and Hong Kong TV drama regularly produce all these period pieces, and we didn't get them in mainland China until I think well past 80s, because during Cultural Revolution, of course, all these are banned, right? Like literally, there were only 8 approved modernized Peking opera / ballet were showing in China, and that's like only entertainment allowed. And it's like stuff like the detachment of the red women and how to what's the other one? The other one actually been made into a movie recently. It's called Taking of the Tiger Mountain by Strategy.
That's a title.
That was a Hong Kong director, Tsui Hark, actually made it into a blockbuster a couple of years ago. So there you go. You have another one on your list now.
It also seems like, I don't know, with China getting a whole lot more industrial and urban with all of these cities being built, it also seems like a movie with a lot of green space.
Well, yeah. That there's a lot of green in that film. Green and vegetarian. I think that's what it's a propaganda for. I actually but now just back to the period piece. I just remember, so in the 80s when finally all these new entertainment were allowed to be flooded in from Hong Kong. And I just remember watching all these period dramas, and everybody on the mainland's like, wow, they look so pretty, dressing all the ancient costumes and like where the girls wearing all this traditional, what people that back then thought traditional costumes, and everything looks so nice and fancy. So that caught on pretty quickly on mainland, and it has been a mainstay ever since. I mean, this came from like Hong Kong and Taiwan, and I don't know if necessarily. I mean, maybe there's part of that nostalgia, as in like the glory days when China was prosperous and culturally self-confident, and before all the westernization set in and stuff. And it's also kind of like the fantasy setting, right? It's like the ancient times, but it's also like kind of like Game of Thrones, right? But without all the sex and the gore and
maybe just a little bit of the sex.
Nowadays the sex is creeping in, yeah. But I'm talking about 1980s, man.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Days. I was just telling. I was interviewed by Razib Khan on his broadcast. I was telling him, like, back in early 80s, when I was in my first grade, I was telling our like classmates that, oh, like now it's reform and opening period, things are really open up. Maybe when we grew up, we'd get even to like hold girls' hands in public and maybe even kiss them in public. I mean, that was 1980. Okay, that was kind of that back then. Just even like PDA is unimaginable. Just like, yeah. Things have changed a lot since then.
Yeah, one of the first movies we watched for this was The X-File 3, and it's just you totally see the shift away from that sort of like reservation for
to an intense, 30 kind of love story in urban China.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like right now the Chinese it used to be called SARF. I don't know what they call it nowadays. The national board of Bureau of Television and Film. Basically the Chinese censor for film and TV dramas. They keep on coming up with these silly rules like one of the rule was you can't make any more ghost movies that take setting after 1949 because after liberation there should be no ghosts. Right? I mean, like, this is ridiculous. And there was another rule that because time travel was getting super popular, it started with people writing time travel web novels, which is kind of like escape fantasy, right? Like people imagining stuff going back in time, and they know everything, how things are going to turn out, so they do super crazy things. But and a lot of them are turning into TV dramas and movies, and it got to the point where they got a new rule a couple of years, like no more time travels, no more time travel period pieces. To a certain extent, I think that's a reaction from like older generation maybe, because you have to understand a lot of these censors who, at least the people who control the Chinese propaganda department, it's staffed by some really old people with really kind of old set views. I mean, their whole morality system is still like literally last century, right? I mean, I'm talking about like stuck in 1970s or 80s or something, and it's not. They have not kept up with like the new generation, because like the post 90 post 2000 generation, they're pretty open. They're pretty open to all kind of influences, and I think that kind of scares some of the older folks who are in charge, unfortunately, in power.
We were talking to someone a couple weeks ago who actually made some movies for the propaganda department, and he's like, "Oh yeah, all of the bosses have been there for 40 years."
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like it's not that sometimes the Chinese netizens even jokes like, God, this Chinese propaganda department, they're so stupid. They all produce all these like really idiotic, really silly, totally out of sync with stuff that people, it's just like laugh stock. But what we realized later, it's not like that people there can't produce top quality stuff. It's just they have superiors to answer to, right? And those superiors are usually a lot older, and they're a lot more old fashioned, let's say. Yeah, and which is unfortunate, but hopefully things will change when new generation move into power. I don't know. I mean, like, things are already changing. Like I said, things that's unimaginable in 1980s is already happening today. But it's all with China. It's always like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So we'll see.
One thing that seems to have changed in here is the gender roles in Monster Hunt 2 and Monster Hunt. Like, they seem to be flipped, and I can't tell if it's a joke or if it's like a political statement. What did you think of that?
Oh yeah, it's kind of a running meme in China. We call it yin sen yang shuai, literally where the yin and yang, right? We're talking about the yin is on the rise, the yang is is falling, because this meme started even back in 1980s when the Chinese women's volleyball team would go on to win like championship in the world championship or like any international games, whereas the guys team, whether basketball or that was before Yao Ming. So whether basketball or football, they just suck. Okay, so I'm sorry, they just suck. I mean, they're like they have been like a laughing stock for like past, I don't know, 40 years, and they haven't improved much. Like in the beginning, they had some excuse because they say, well, okay, China is a poor country. We're not like in Europe or some countries where they spend a lot of money on the football team, right? But nowadays, man, there's no more excuse because they're getting paid a lot. They just suck.
I think there's this running theme where Tianyan is plays a more effeminate role throughout the movie, but we do see this come up later where Xiaolin mentions being the last in her line and there's pressure on her to keep her family going, and that seemed to come out a little bit out of nowhere. Maybe is that pleasing the superiors aspect of the movie?
No, because that literally that actually you kind of also kind of flip a little bit, because that's usually something pressure is usually on male to reproduce, to continue the family line, because it was very important to carry on the family name to the next generation, which means to produce a male heir, right? To produce a son. And in this case, because I guess because as you noticed, they did a gender role flipping between the guy and the girl, and so the girl is saying, "Oh, I'm under pressure to continue my family line," right? So she's kind of taking over like a role normally like for a guy, right? But yeah, definitely the gender switching was a theme in that movie, along with vegetarian.
The gender switching, it seemed a little toned down by the time we got to the second one, though.
Well, yeah. Except for that gynecologist scene at the start.
Except for that gynecologist scene, which was strange.
There was a gynecologist scene in this. Oh, I haven't got there yet, probably.
No, I think it was right at the start. Yeah, they're like reading his hands, and they're like,
"Oh yes."
He has postpartum depression.
Yeah.
From Uba.
Yeah. I mean, like, because there's also like there's kind of, I don't know. There's also kind of like an urban middle class anxiety right now in China. You know, people worry about the new generation men are not, masculine enough, because all the, like, right now, if you look at all the idols, right, they take their cue from K-pop, right, which means, guys super, like, all these like boy band looking very young, or sometimes even androgynous looking guys with like who wear like makeup and like I don't know. I mean like it's like people worry. I'm like, I don't know, but that's what just the Far East Asian women are going for nowadays. I mean, it's go with the market. That's just what the masses are demanding. I don't know what to say, but there are some people who were apparently some pundits who worry about such things. They write articles. But in general, I think there's also a kind of shift in the West as well, right? I mean, like now the women don't depend on the men as much as for like a meal ticket, right? Now women are making their own money. They're more in charge with their own life, and then you have all these incels, right? That we keep on hearing about.
Wow.
I mean, it's a global phenomena. It's a global phenomena.
Yeah, I think the goal over here more is to just sort of make gender roles go away more.
Well, depending on who you are, right? Like, there's a whole lot of right-wing people around who are like, gotta keep it the same.
Oh, you guys haven't seen Steve Chow's Journey to the West Conquering Demon movie yet. Because I was gonna say that trope about the female tomboyish female demon hunter, that totally reminded me of the Stephen Chow movie, Journey to the West Conquering Demon, because in that movie, one of the protagonists was, a girl, literally a girl demon hunter who is also a tomboy. And also in that movie, the girl was a guy. Well, the girl is the one that's pursuing the guy, right? Whereas the guy was playing kind of the coquettish one. And so there's a general theme here.
So maybe I want to come back to the sort of a politics I think that existed in the movie in Monster Hunt. The movie starts off with basically a regime change kind of agenda, right? I mean, this isn't false, but it's very conservative almost, right? Where you go from one monarchy to another monarchy, and at least that's the goal of the
better monarchy.
right.
Well, when I watched that movie, that portion of the movie, what it reminded me of is Lion King.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that was just like came straight out of the Lion King. You know, like a new old king got overthrown, and the young fugitive prince, you know, like is seeking shelter. And so I was kind of expecting that along that kind of line. I'm like, oh, okay, he's of course the new monster prince is gonna, you know, probably find some friends among the human world. Now he's probably gonna return like strong and take back what's rightfully his. But it didn't turn out that way. So, but that's what the vibe I was getting, the Lion King vibe.
Well, he doesn't even grow up in the second movie at all. He's basically the same old Wooba.
Yeah, I think maybe it's intentional. Maybe they want to like keep on making sequels. I don't know. I don't know how long they want to milk this enterprise. Or do you guys know the box office number? I mean, are these two films huge in China?
They're huge. Yeah, they're
massive,
they're 6th and 7th, I believe.
I think, Andrew, you were talking about this. I think there are 2 current like sequels already in the works.
They're currently in production. Yeah,
there's another spin-off. There is like a TV series I think that's going.
An animated TV series supposedly is in the works. Roller coaster rides based on the show, on the movie.
I don't get it. I think I enjoyed it. I watched the first one. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a cute movie, but like it's not like it's something I would watch on Netflix, which it is on Netflix.
Yeah, it is. The first one's on Netflix. Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I would even spend, you know, $10-15 to watch in the theater. And after watching, I'm like more than halfway through the second movie because I'm like an hour 15 minutes into an hour 15 minutes movie, and at this point, I'm like, I can just see the sequel is going to be the same movie, like over and over and over. I mean, it's fine if you just want some mindless entertainment, like if you're bored, you know, have nothing better to do. It's fun because before watching that movie, I just watched old 1984 movie about Sino-Vietnamese War, and it was really depressing at the end. So I kind of needed the laugh for Monster Hunt 2. So it did have its moments, like the gynecologist. Visit, but actually, for me, the most funniest part so far is the circus scene.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, giving him permission to go harder and barely coming out alive of that scene.
We should probably give a little bit of context because people don't know. Yeah, so to the gambler that Wooba's with, he's like running away from people who have recognized him and want to collect debts. And so I think he hides in like a performing circus
dressed as a lion.
Costume, yeah. And he gets sort of pushed out as a magician's assistant to do these dangerous acts that he's never done before.
It turns out the guy that was going to do it to him has never done it either.
Keeps calling him bro, reassuring him.
And for me, that was like the funniest part. I mean, it's at that point I realized, okay, what's going on here? Because now suddenly this new guy that they just introduced to the second movie, he's kind of like stealing the show here. Like it's the movie is more about him now with Wooba rather than like the kind of the Wooba's adoptive parents who were more the center of the first movie, right? But then again, they're still going at kind of the subplot with the two parents trying to, you know, they're trying to find Wooba and they're hanging out in that monster hunting bureau. And I just felt like that almost became like a side plot for me. Yeah, so I'm like, where are they going with it? That's when I kind of stopped. Started the show. Let me turn it around. What did you guys thought about the movie? The first one and the second one?
I thought that the first one was like a real slog, but like I was like, oh my god, there's gonna be so many things to talk about.
I agree. At many times in the first movie, I really just was dreading how long I have left in it. But at the end, I realized that there was a lot of things we could talk about on the show for that.
Yeah.
Which I didn't feel the same way about the second one, which was maybe an easier watch, but a too easy a watch.
Yeah.
I'm so much more generous than you always. I was feeling like it's a movie for kids, and I feel like in that department it does a good job. I mean, it's cute, it's fun, it has some sweet messages. It's a little dark in some places, like when they're fighting in the basement of this restaurant where the like corpses of the other villagers are just hanging overhead. I was just like, whoa.
Seriously. I mean, that's where I thought, well, how old the kids are we talking about here? Are they like 6 or are they like 13? I mean, like, if I'm like a 9-year-old, I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one of the reason I'm just guessing here now. I'm guessing one of the reason it might be so successful in China is because the Chinese audience are kind of hungering after, they love Hollywood, right? They love Hollywood movies, but they kind of want like all the
Hollywood with Chinese characteristics.
Yes, exactly. Hollywood style movie, but with Chinese characteristics. They want to tell a Chinese story in a very Chinese setting, right? Like both of these films that take place in some kind of far off fantasy land, but it's recognizably like some kind of ancient Chinese setting, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what people want to see, and you use this all the like 3D, CGI stuff that kind of people are familiar with from Disney, Pixar, but it's Chinese.
Yeah, I mean the guys who made this came over from DreamWorks, where they'd been working like since the start of it.
Yeah.
Thanks to Carl. Here's Guillermo Retos, production designer of Monster Hunt 2 and the art director of Shrek and Ants. He was a great guest. Here's our conversation.
Was animation, was that your first love? Was that what you originally wanted to get into when you first got into production design?
Well, yes and no. So I always drew. I don't remember not drawing, actually. So I started very, very young, and I never stopped. But I'm French, and I arrived in the US at 33. So now it's a long time ago. I'm 55. I'm not making any mysteries of it. But so no, I always drew, and I always wanted to see my drawing move. So in a way, yes. But then I wanted to be a paleontologist. I was fascinated by biology. I studied philosophy a little bit. I went to an industrial design school in France and a fine art school in France. And actually, the combination of fine arts and industrial design is quite a good preparation for designing specifically for CG films. But almost everything is CG now anyway. So even in the most low budget live action film, you have special effects all over that you don't necessarily see, erasing signs, erasing panels, erasing wires, all of that stuff. So now the frontier between CG and live action has considerably erased since the beginning of computer generated images.
Some of our audience might not be super familiar with the work of production designers, and especially in animation. Could you describe what you do?
It's a bit different, production designer in animation and in live action. Basically, a production designer is the head of the design of a film, which means everything that's visual is his responsibility. So it goes from in pre-production, you get a script and you have to figure out what the movie is going to look like. In animation, you have to design the characters because those are not actors. You have to design the sets, and very often there is a specific style to the film, a graphic style, so you have to define that. So to do that, you have a second in command, which is your partner in crime, which is the art director, and then you have an art department, which can be can go from 4 people to 20 people, who are all concept artists and are working with you to define the style of the film. So an animated film in general has about 30 sequences. In each sequence, there is a few shots that we select in pre-production to actually do paintings of, so that when we get into CG, we can give some references to the lighters. So in pre-production, basically, you prepare everything about the film, the style, the look and feel of the film in general, as well as the detail of the character design and costumes and all the sets. And by the end of that period, you'd better know where you're going, because suddenly the team goes from, about 30 people working together, then you're going to production. And that suddenly is a team of, 200, 300 people, depending on the film. So suddenly the team becomes a lot bigger. And the job of the production designer changes also. Because what we do is actually direct modeling and lighting and special effects and surfacing, basically everything that is related to the image, big or small, is your responsibility to work with everybody to make it happen like you imagined it.
We were looking a bit on your website and some of your portfolio stuff. You have these gorgeous renderings of the films that you've worked on. And so we were just wondering, when you get to that point, when you get into production and you have these teams of 200, 300 people, all of them with specific jobs, where does your personal involvement on things sort of end?
Well, the job, I have to say, in animation is extremely heavy, because you literally speak to everyone every day. I mean, of course, not every day 300 people, but you have a production team that helps you spread that and basically see people when they need your input. So it's really like being first violin during the pre-production time, where you actually paint and draw and sketch and try to inspire that way. And in production, you become a conductor. So you don't have the time to play the instrument yourself. You're literally helping everybody play the instrument. So, and I have to say, I love this job because of it. You have to love people, because otherwise it's a very difficult job.
Speaking of people you, I'm sure, and hope love, could you tell us about how you met Raman, the director of Monster Hunt?
Yes, absolutely. So in 95, I published a book in France, which randomly the subject was about ants. And that book ended up in the hands of DreamWorks and the directors of Ants and the producer of Ants, and Katzenberg saw it, and they decided to call me in Paris and have me start, testing me on the design of what Ants could be. So I did that for about 6 months. I sent FedEx packages because it was before Skype and podcast. And so I sent huge amount of paper to California, where I had never been. And then after 6 months, they asked me, well, do you want, your designs have a strong influence on the movie, so we would be interested to have you come and meet with the directors and Jeffrey Katzenberg. Basically, DreamWorks was just starting. There was 80 people in the company at the time. And so I came, and they put me in an office in Lancashire in Los Angeles. And there was 2 drawing tables in that room. One was me, and the other one was Raman.
Wow.
And so our first order of business was the 2 of us to figure out the design of the characters for Ants. So Raman is an extremely talented animator, kind of insanely talented animator. He draws super well. He's super smart. He's lovely. And so we got along really well. And we started designing characters for Ants. So after that, I got hired, and Raman was the head of animation on Ants. And then we met again for Shrek, where Raman became a director, and I was the production designer of the film. So we have a very, very long history. Basically, when we work together, it's incredibly easy, because we have shorthands. We know we are friends, so it makes everything much simpler. There is no pretending, there is no egos, and so it's quite lovely.
And you didn't work on the first Monster Hunt, right?
Yeah, so I was at DreamWorks still when Raman went back to Hong Kong after, I don't know, 30 years at DreamWorks in LA and PDI, so in the Bay Area, because we also were there, the two of us, for a bit more than 10 years. And at one point, Raman decided to go back to Hong Kong and wrote Monster Hunt and shot Monster Hunt. And then, 20 years after my beginning at DreamWorks, my contract ended. And literally the day my contract ended, Raman said, I of course I had known of the success of the first one. And the day I left DreamWorks, Raman said, what did you say? You come with me, you do the second one with me.
Wow.
So, one, it's Raman. Two, it's an hybrid live action animation. And three, it's completely crazy. And so, it's really insane. And so it's wonderful because of it. The state of mind of those films are quite something. So that's how it happened. It very, very simply.
Was it a challenge to jump into that hybrid with the live action and the animation?
Well, there is two parts to that answer. One, the life of an artist makes it that every new project is a challenge because it feels like you're starting from zero, because every story is different. So you have to reinvent something. You have to invent something for that particular film. So in that way, yes, it is a challenge. But the other part of that answer is that it's mainly, to me, it was mainly very, very exciting because suddenly it's an hyperreal film with, crazy animals who have the ability to shapeshift and make jokes. And I mean, it was so crazy that it was mainly very exciting. It was like designing a sci-fi film.
So I just have a question just about taking over after having somebody else having done the production design on the first one. So how did you, because having watched both, I saw a lot of the innovation that you brought to it. Like, for example, the first scene in the second one with the new monstered village, like that was beautiful. And I really like the character design of the new monsters that you introduced to it. I was just wondering how you decided what you wanted to keep from the aesthetic of the first one, what was necessary to carry on with that, and where you decided to add your own flair to it.
So the monsters are mainly sketched by Raman himself because he draws very well. So, so that's his part. He always did love doing that. So the team was actually quite exploded everywhere. Some of the artists I was working with were in Europe. On the East Coast, me being in LA, some were in LA with me, some were in Beijing at Base Effects, where the effects of the movies were made. I mean, basically the image of the film is made. And what we did for that film was, and so Raman drew the monsters himself, and he worked with the Base Effects artist on that there. On the aesthetic of the film, we went actually far more crazy than on the sets than what is in the film ultimately, which is, very often the case because you have to go too far to come back. And in terms of design, that episode of the film was for an animation production designer who deals with completely imaginary set. My job, it was defined by Raman when we first spoke. He said, well, go ahead and imagine the civilization of the monsters. And so that's what we did, trying to imagine the habitat. And, we did a bunch of stuff. As I know, Raman is working on the third one. So there is still some sets that he can draw on for the next film.
Did you have to do research on Chinese culture to incorporate that into the world of the film?
I did. I actually that was kind of Raman is from Hong Kong, so I don't have much to teach him about Chinese culture. Me being French and all. But at one point, I was, kind of scouting locations in China, and I came across that extraordinary landscape of really spiky rocks, which is in central China, and Raman didn't know about it, and they actually went to shoot there ultimately. So that was funny. I taught him one thing, but I was surprised.
One of the most fun parts of the film for me were all of Gambler 2's tricks. Can you talk about the sort of conception behind those? Like, for instance, the wall that he throws up and his various disguises.
That is entirely Raman.
Really?
Yes. He really went for it, and I think the second one is actually even crazier than the first one.
Yeah.
With all the pregnant monsters battling with their bellies. I mean, this is something out of this world, really. Complete craziness. But that's wonderful, though. I mean, it's wonderful to see him really be able to do what he wants to do, and that is really impressive. And I think he's so happy he went back to Hong Kong, and it's working out stunningly well. So here you go.
Do you see any more involvement for yourself and him in the future as this franchise continues to expand? Because I know that they're working on a lot of different things for Monster Hunt now.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just finished the design of the film literally a week ago. So maybe. I know that we talked about working on some stuff in the middle of last year, but I was in the middle of designing a movie, so I couldn't. But now I can again, so we don't know.
What is it like working in a world where the sources of filmmaking, like in the US and China, are so dispersed? Is there anything exciting about these changes in the cinematic world?
There's a lot to say about that subject, because it is changing the world of movie making and TV making and game making. All of that is now really at an apex, I think. It's almost scary because it feels like there could be a bubble at one point. But at the same time, what happened in the 90s with the advent of the digital world is that there is a necessity for image creating professionals. And that has been going up and up and up and up over the past 25 years. And it's really impressive. When I got here in 96, Ants was the second CG film, computer-generated images film on the market after Toy Story. So you had at the time literally 2 studios in the world able to do this. I mean, and we fast forward 23 years from there, and now we have basically visual imagination in almost everything. The frontier between live action and animation is more and more blurred. You see, the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the latest one. This is an animated film, yes, but not really. How different is it from the Marvel movies, where the first sequence is entirely CG? So all of that world, not only the frontier is blurring, but the market is expanding because, of course, buying a computer and starting to make CG images, the power of the computers now and the power of the software, the fact that the software takes care of a lot of what was only 10 years ago very heavy R&D on the studio part. Now you can download software packages that allow you to make professional quality images in CG. So this is really, and now you have VR. You have one of my friend, Goro Fujita, is at Facebook, Oculus, developing a software called Quill, which allows you to, in VR, paint, sculpt, and animate in VR anything you want, and extremely fast. So all of that is completely shifting both the tools and the easiness of making images happen. But the demand is also huge. Netflix, best revenue of the year last year in 2018, beating records. Almost everybody I know from DreamWorks is now at Netflix or at Sony Animation. So Sony Animation is producing a lot. The international markets, you have animation studios popping up in France because of tax incentives, the same way Vancouver is a place where movies are made right now because of those exact same Canadian tax incentives. France did the same thing 2 years ago, and it's also completely changing the market there. You have all the Asian studios, and there are a lot also that are really becoming very strong contenders. In LA, you have a bunch of studios also, going from extremely sophisticated live action effects to stop motion. So almost, anybody now can make CG the same way almost anybody can make a film. We have literally a film studio in our pockets with our cell phones, which doesn't mean that a lot of people do it, because as soon as you start doing it, you realize how difficult it is to make a good film. But still, the possibilities are there now. And there is one thing I tell, I'm also chair at Art Center in Pasadena, of the entertainment design department. And one thing I tell my students is it's to make. And because it's only by making that you joyfully make mistakes and get better at it. So, but now the ability to make is extraordinary. When I was a teenager, there was no internet, no cell phones. It was the very beginning of computers, where you could not even communicate with anybody because there was no internet. You could just program stuff. And that was arduous and not fun. And now anybody can grab his cell phone and make a film. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. I think for the three of us, we all grew up with these CGI animated movies. It's so hard for us to wrap our heads around how new the technology really is and how rapidly it's been developing.
It's exploding, yeah. It's extremely fast, and it's accelerating. So yeah, now one of the things I'm looking at and I see some of my friends doing is actually in the very beginning of the design of a film, going from a painting of a set to a very rough model of that set, but textured. And you can, put your goggles on and take your director inside the set he's going to play with.
That's crazy.
And at DreamWorks, we built a room to be able to do that about 10 years ago. It cost a fortune. Mm-hmm. The image was black and white. The CG was so basic that that the director could, make very basic decision about the way he was going to film the set. Now, any one of my students who has a Vive or an Oculus Rift can do that in his bedroom. It's unbelievable.
One thing that I find really interesting about your films is, even though they're made with all this incredibly advanced technology, is that a lot of them focus on very pastoral, very green worlds. And I think of ants, with the separation between the ant world and the urban human world. Shrek, obviously, with the huge old-fashioned medieval green world that he lives in. And Monster Hunt 2, which is full of a much older green world that you see a lot less of now in China with their industrialization. Mm-hmm. Is there anything about that sort of green world that speaks to you in particular?
I do love nature and I do love light. One of my big passion when I'm making a film is working with the lighters to do the direction of photography of the film in effect, which in live action you would have a director of photography. On an animated film, some of them have a director of photography like in live action, but on all the films I worked on, I did the direction of photography because I love it. And I think it's extraordinary because you go from your painting, which is, even if you make a nice painting, it's still a painting, meaning you can't move through it. You can't, you can't. It's basically one of the thrills of making those films is you start with a little sketch and then a little painting, and then for the first time you sit in a dark room with the modelers and the lighters, and boom, the set does exist, and you can move the camera in. and then you can change the light settings completely, direction, temperature, in order to enhance the story again. And that, I have to say, it gives me chills every time I see a set that we drew in the art department come to life on the screen. It's just unbelievable.
All right, well, I think that's it for the Monster Hunt episode. Thanks again to Carl Jean and Guillaume Aretos.
Follow us on Twitter at China Film Pod, like the Uproar in the Studio Facebook page, and maybe even Venmo us at Reza-Saeed, and put Uproar in your description. Every penny counts in this quest to find Jackie Chan. And if you feel like it, have some thoughts or suggestions, email us at uproarinthestudio, all in one word, at gmail.com.
Our original music comes from Elliot Saltmarsh and Yehuda of Fist with a PH, and our art comes courtesy of Jay Castro. In 2 weeks, we'll be talking about Hello, Mr. Billionaire. But before we leave you this week, we just want to share some wisdom from the chair.
To read too many books is harmful. We'll see you in 2 weeks.